Hey, before we jump into today's episode, I want to share something special with you. As 2024 draws to a close, have you started thinking about creating your business plan for 2025? Is it even on your radar? Well, it should be. 2025 is closer than you think. Planning your year is one of the most important activities you can do as a business owner because it helps you set the overall direction of your business and determine the actions you must take to achieve your goals. I know that the idea of planning your year can feel overwhelming and honestly hard to quote unquote find the time to do it, despite how badly you want to gain clarity, set goals, strategize, create a business plan, and determine the exact actionables to take your business to the next level. Well, good news. I want to help you take the guesswork out of how to plan your year and rid you of the overwhelm that often accompanies strategic business planning. That's why I've decided to host a VIP business planning event in Las Vegas, and you're invited.
Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas!
During this intimate 2-day event, November 2nd and 3rd, I will personally help you plan your entire year over a weekend. You'll get 2 days of strategic business planning with me, a business blueprint, strategic planning workbook, all meals, including a special dinner and show on the world-famous Las Vegas Strip. You'll walk away with a clear, actionable plan for your business and a literal blueprint for 2025. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/business planning. Again, that's amberdelagarza.com/business planning to get additional details and join me in Las Vegas.
You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber Delagarza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber Delagarza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 347, Plugging into Money and Abundance with Sarah Walton. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profit, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I am excited. I'm looking forward to it. And wow, are you in for a treat to meet our guest, Sarah Walton. I interview and have interviewed a lot of people, but this lady brought the value, the insight, the energy. And what you may not know is that a good interview is sometimes about good chemistry. And I had the pleasure of being a guest on her podcast first. And so I really got to know her. She got to know me. And of course, after I got to know her, I invited her to be a guest on my podcast. And so you're going to get to hear this conversation that honestly, I'm really happy I was able to have her as a guest for you. Let me share a little bit about Sarah. Sarah Walton is a business coach and sales expert who's been featured on the Today Show, speaks at women's conferences all over the world, and has helped hundreds of women start and grow businesses they love. From growing up in a low-income household with a single mom to helping moms turn their passion into a business they love that can support their families, Sarah's lived experience shows how women can powerfully change their lives and the lives of their families and communities. Sarah's transitioned from being just another coach to being a change maker. It's time to put more money in the hands of more women. And Sarah is all in. In this conversation with Sarah, you will discover how your relationship with money shows up in business, the truth about having money and abundance, how to start building a healthy relationship with money, what it looks like to be in the trenches of doing the work, We always hear, do the work, do the work. And I really wanted to dive in and unpack, what does doing the work mean around money mindset? A look through the lens of abundance versus scarcity, the difference in charging what the work is worth instead of what you're worth, how your clients feel when you show up to serve them in the way they need, what you must know to truly feel free, and so much more. Before we dive in and get to meet Sarah, I want to invite you to take my Next Level Business Owner quiz. Take this quick 3-minute quiz to find out what's most holding you back and then get a valuable resource in your inbox. Once you determine with this quiz what's most holding you back, you will receive a curated, personalized playlist with specific episodes to listen to that have resources, strategies, methods that you can implement in your business immediately. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/quiz. Again, hit pause before you jump into today's interview. Head on over, take this quick quiz, and when you're done with this interview, it will be waiting for you in your inbox. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/quiz. And now, let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah. How are you today?
I am awesome, Amber. How are you doing today? I'm so excited to chat with you.
Me too, because I just was on your podcast and we really hit it off and had a great time. And so I'm so happy that you get to be here on Small Business Straight Talk.
Me too. It's so fun.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about your favorite topic, which I'm sure is even more fun for you.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So before we dive into all things sales, abundance, a relationship to money, which are all amazing topics, I would love to hear a little bit we didn't hear in your official bio of like, why do I get to talk to you about this? Like, why did you make this your life's work of like, I'm going to help small business owners, specifically females, around this issue?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So hang on to your hats and glasses because it started when I was 5.
Okay. Hold on. I'm going to hit the fast forward button.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. Right. Yeah. But it really did. And it started just because I was watching ballet on TV. I was watching the Nutcracker or something. I was like, oh my gosh, Mom, I want to do that. I don't know what that is, but I want to do that.
Aww.
And we were incredibly poor. So like when I tell you we were incredibly poor, we would have like a half a loaf of bread that my mother made from scratch and a jar of honey. The end, right? Like that was literally what we would have. And so I couldn't take dance lessons or anything like that. So I learned by watching MTV. I learned from like Paula Abdul and Janet Jackson and like, oh my gosh, all the fun stuff that happened in the 80s to all of us crazy people. And then it came time to try out for the high school dance team. And this had been like a goal of mine forever. So I'm now 16 years old. I've Janet Jacksoned my way into getting this audition, right? And I made the team. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. I grew up in this really tight-knit community and people were dropping off little roses and like, oh my God, congrats. This is so great. And then I got the letter that talked about the costumes and the jackets and the shoes and how much it was going to cost. And you know, Amber, I don't know if you've ever had like an out-of-body experience where you sort of watch yourself go through something because it's too painful to deal with. But I was like, oh, she's having a moment. Like it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
Like my stomach dropped through the floor. My hands got sweaty. And I was like, what? And I'm watching this dream of mine just evaporate. What I decided to do at that time was get a job at the mall. And I always joke around, if people don't remember malls, just think of Stranger Things. It was a lot like that. And I had like this little job at a kiosk selling crap that nobody needed, but it was the 80s, so it was cool. And I got my first paycheck and I was so excited because it was enough for the deposit. And I didn't have a bank account. So we went to the grocery store because there used to be these amazing service desks back when there was customer service in anything. And you could get your check cash there. It was so great.
Imagine that.
I said, I know, right? Imagine people being helpful for just to be helpful. So I go to like get my check cashed. I'm with my mom, single mom, right? And my younger half brother. And we walk in. And as we're walking in with my check in hand, my mom said, Sarah, the strawberries are on sale. Can we get some? And I'm thinking of my costumes. I'm thinking of that deposit. And I'm thinking of the strawberries. And I'm like, yes, we can do both. So I go get my check cashed. I have my cash in hand and I go to find my mom and my brother in the checkout, like the express checkout, right? But they're not there. I'm like, where did they go? And I'm looking up and down all the aisles. And I find them in line with a cart full of groceries. And it's a cart full of groceries. I know my mom she can't afford them, right? And I'm looking in the cart, my sweet little brother's hanging out in the cart, having a good time. And I'm looking in this cart and it's like milk and his favorite breakfast cereal and, bread and lunch meats for his lunches, and the strawberries. And I'm like, oh, dear God, I can take care of my family right now, or I can pay for something I've wanted for as long as I can remember, but I can't do both. And that, right, I can't do both, right? That got locked in at 16. And what I did is I was the first woman in my family to go to college. I have 65 cousins, so that's saying something. I moved from Little Sandy, Utah to, New York City. I start getting these really great jobs. By this time, I'm married. I have 2 kids. And I'm sitting in my awesome glass office with like my FICA tree. And I'm hearing this clock in my office tick away the seconds of my life I can't get back. And while I was making a lot of money and taking care of my family, I was miserable.
Yeah.
Because I had decided at 16, I could never do both. I could never take care of myself and my family. And that moment when I was listening to the clock tick away those seconds of my life was the first time I'd remembered that moment in the grocery store. I had forgotten about it.
I'm so glad you shared that, because right now you're sharing it and you're like, all the dots connect, huh? But that's not how it is when you're in it. It's never.
No.
So
it's totally
it makes for a great succinct story afterwards, but when you're in it, you're not like recalling that memory. Yeah. Yes.
It's so true. It's so true. And I really had a shock. It was like, oh my God, a 16-year-old girl is running my life. It was really, it kind of felt like I was like, oh my gosh, right? Anyway, what I had done that day, well, that was the day I quit work. And I started.
You quit the same day you had this aha.
That day because I remembered it. And I was like, I'm not doing this to myself anymore. And I went into my boss and I reconstructed my organization because I was running an entire department. And I was like, here's how you can restructure this. And he was like, I'm not going to ever let you go. I'm like, well, you don't have a choice. And yes, you are, right? So we did that. And I made sure to do it well. And of course they were taken care of. And I was on as a consultant for a while. But because that was the day I quit, so much had happened in my career and I was watching it. I was always the only woman in the room when we would have these executive conversations, financial projections, talking about morale, looking at who we were going to hire next. I'm like, why am I the only woman in here? Sometimes the head of HR would be a woman and she'd be in there, but rarely. And it was like, this is not proprietary information. This is 4th grade math. Like, what is going on here? And so I decided to really take that expertise and teach it to other women. But the reason I chose other women was because that day in the grocery store, I decided to pay for the groceries. And another woman in my community heard what had happened and she paid for my costumes, which was unbelievable, right? And this is known as my grocery store story. Like, people who've heard me speak or have watched me at conferences and stuff, they'll be like, it's a grocery store story. But I've told it so much that it's so easy to get disconnected. Like, we can all get disconnected from our stories in business.
I'm crying. Like, you're not crying. I'm listening to the story. I got tears in my eyes. Yeah.
I cry.
But
I cry because in 2019, I held a conference in Salt Lake City. I decided to go back home and host a conference there. And this is where I cry every time. I got to bring her up on stage and say, you guys have heard this story before. And I always talk about the woman, here she is. And it was so amazing. There's actually a video of it on YouTube. I see her and just start bawling. And it was so moving to say, listen, all of you have heard this story. It's not just a story. There's a person here who caused this to happen. And because of her actions, I really got connected into the truth that when women have money, they do amazing things. And had this woman not done that for me, I don't know that I would be, living on the East Coast. If I would have married the person I married, had the children I had, have the career I had, I have no idea what would have happened to me if that day I bought the groceries and went home and just cried. Because I would have given up on my dream, right? I don't know what would have happened, but thanks to her, we've got a really great story because she had money that she had access to, and she chose to take care of someone else's child with it, as most women do. Not every woman, right? But most of the time we put money in the hands of women, great things happen. And that tends to be the trend. And then we forget. We're like, no, women should have more money. This is a good thing. And every time we do, it's great. So that was a very long answer to your short question.
Oh, it was a beautiful, I mean, We were chatting about like, what do we actually want to zone in on? And we're talking sales today and abundance. And you said relationship with money. And I was like, that's it, like relationship with money. And as you're sharing that story, I've shared pieces of it over the years on the podcast, but like you, I was from a very, very poor family as well. And I didn't have the grocery store moment, but I had lots of moments where as early as I can remember, I worked or was helping my mom clean houses so that we could have food in the house or groceries. And the idea of playing sports or having anything where you had to pay, that wasn't even an option when I was a kid. Like my friends were playing soccer, my friends were doing this or that. That was just a non-starter because we didn't have those resources. And so I can just resonate with so much of your story. And when we think about where these early beliefs came from, I've worked through my own. I have my own sticking points, but I also have my own wins, as you shared, of like women, provide and like there's a way, right? And I think about, my own experience and how that's shown up in my business of like hard worker, I'm willing to do what it takes. Like that also was the other side of maybe an unfortunate situation. So I'm just sharing briefly, but wow, your story hit home tremendously. And I'm glad that you highlighted that it wasn't like you knew how those stories were connected all the ways, because I like to say new level, new devil. Like it wasn't like, oh, I decided to start a business and now I went through my childhood and figured out all my blocks. No, it's like first block, like start the business. Can you do it? Oh, take a paycheck. Oh, interesting. There's a block there. Make your first 6 figures. What the hell? I thought I had this covered. Make more than your husband. Is that going to, blow up the marriage? Do the next level and the next level. So I don't know if I've ever said the F word on the podcast before.
Well, but it's cool because I got head to toe chills because the truth of what you just said is like so spot on. Yeah.
Right. And
100%.
So you have to go back and you got to work through, like you said, I had a 16-year-old wanting my life. That gave me chills, right? Because you can have this frozen thought process that didn't mature. It didn't let any other input of life change that perspective. And so you're making decisions through that 16-year-old. And I can see how, decisions have been made unconsciously until chosen consciously from all stages of my life. And I think that's true for everyone listening. Whoever you are, whatever your experience is, you could have come from a wealthy family and have money relationship issues. So we can all, no matter what our stories are, come kind of to the same place where there needs to be some work done.
Every time. And it's so funny you said that. I was just, my Abundance Academy, meets on the same day that you and I are talking. And we were just talking about this today. And I said, look around at the world and look at how many 5-year-olds are running massive corporations, governments, people. Like you can see the hurt in humanity, and it's such a shared piece for all of us. Like you were saying, we all can come there. Yeah. The business journey is a very specific one, but in our global shared humanity, you can see this. You can see where people's thinking got frozen. Well, I'm going to take my toys and go home. Well, you can't talk to me like that, right? Like you can hear it in the level of conversation. It's like, oh my gosh, we have a thought process that was frozen at a young time.
Right.
And I do think it's so important for us to remember. It's so powerful because once you see it, you can go, oh, I'm the one who said that.
Right.
And then if somebody else is the person at age 5 or whatever who said something nasty to you that got stuck, you can decide whether or not you want to keep it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to know where it got put in. I think that is so valuable, what you just said. I think that's so important.
Yeah. I think that when I think of the growth in my business, there's like growth of the business, there's growth of my skill set in the business, but there's this huge aspect of personal growth and personal challenge. And that excites the hell out of me. That excites me more than thinking about where my business is going to be in 5 years and thinking more of like, who's the woman I'm going to be in 5 years because I'm a business owner and because these insecurities or these beliefs that just ripple up, like, are you willing to face them? Are you willing to deal with them so that you can get to that like next pit stop where you're dealing with something else, at a time, I say they probably spread out a little bit further after you've been in business for quite a while, but I just don't believe they go away 100%. But are you willing to be the observer of your beliefs? Are you able to like, you were saying that you had that moment where you were stepping outside yourself of like, this is the moment when you couldn't afford. And I use that same thought really in every day, like business, dealing with my son, my husband, my relationships is like, okay, what am I actually believing or thinking that's having this experience right now?
Mm,
Because
mm.
then I'm not a victim of the way that I'm thinking or feeling. Like now you have choice once you become the observer of how you're thinking, believing, thus feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Very powerful.
With regards to relationship to money, I would love to hear what you have to say about how does that show up in business or the success of business or lack thereof of, if we have a healthy relationship with money or an unhealthy relationship with money.
Yeah. And okay. So, wow. Everything you just said, there was so much in there. And just before we jump into that, because it is very, very connected, is I am so like behind what you just said about who am I going to have to become to be successful at this. I think that's actually the prize. The money is wonderful. I love having money, love being able to do so. Oh my God, for sure. But who you have to become in order to cause that is really where all the joy is. And that leads us to our relationship to money for sure. I think when I was, my philosophy about money is very different from most people. And it actually happened. I don't even know if I can take credit for it. I'm not that woo-woo, but I kind of feel like it was a download. I'm like, okay. And I was in Pennsylvania. I was practicing for a keynote. And I was like going over, and I kept hearing money is love. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? And I just kept practicing my talk. It was like, no, Sarah, money's love. And I was like, no, it's not. And a couple of days later, like I gave that talk and people were talking about, whoa, that was a little bit different than anything I've ever heard you say. And I was like, yeah, I know. I got to think about this, right? So I sort of digested it. And then I remembered in my early 20s, I had worked with Marianne Williamson. And if you don't know who she is, that's fine. But she really was a very popular teacher of the Course in Miracles, which I have not studied. So I'm not going to pretend I've studied it, right? I can't pretend to be a guru. I know there's people who know it way better than me. But the idea in the Course in Miracles is there's only two true emotions. There's fear and there's love.
Yeah. Gosh, you're taking me way
job.
back to my early 20s, Course in Miracles. Okay.
Come on.
I haven't heard that in forever.
So good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the idea was that love's job is to bring up fear so the fear can be healed and transmuted back into love. And that was the love I was hearing, is that money's job is to stoke what you haven't healed. And I was like, oh, now that I can get behind. And I think what I've really seen in the 15 years I've been coaching women in business, anytime I watch somebody get successful and then pull back real fast, they're like, nope, never mind. I was just kidding. Or they start like, I'm not motivated. Or they stop running the campaign that was working, or something happens, right? And I'm
lots of self-sabotage.
Okay. Yeah. And it's because something hasn't been healed yet. And so it's like, what's the thought process that's going on inside of you? Oh, well, I don't want to be one of those snotty people. I'm like, now we're getting somewhere. What's going on? Who's snotty?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Root of all evil. Money is the root of all evil. Or so many sayings and beliefs around this, right?
So many. Yeah. So it's like all that stuff gets thrown out. I'm like, okay, where'd you learn that?
Yeah.
Who told you that?
Right.
And do you want to keep it? And I think when we can really get to that and understand that it is making money, like having an influx of money into your life is one of the most healing things you can do. And for anybody who just heard, nah, I'll turn into an ass, right? Like whatever happens internally, people I feel people freak out when I say that. Those are the exact beautiful things you can decide to go heal, because the truth about having money is having it actually is a magnifying glass on you. So if you are generous and warm and loving and kind, money just allows you to be more of that. If you're a jackwagon, money can allow you to be more of a jackwagon. So at the end of the day, it's really about self-knowledge and self-trust, which for women has been damaged for most of us throughout our lives, right?
Yeah.
We're told our emotions aren't real. We're told that, we're supposed to look pretty, but please don't have any feelings because they make me uncomfortable. So we don't trust ourselves. I've done work with, just a quick trigger warning, but I've done a lot of work with women who are sexually assaulted. And the actual assault they can really get through, but what they usually can't get through is when they say to me, Sarah, I knew the second I heard his voice, but I didn't want to be rude. And that just like we all feel that, right? It's like, oh. And healing that part of it is actually where the amazing work is, because as women, we don't trust ourselves. We've been told we don't know what we're doing. You don't know how to handle money. Women are amazing with money. We are so good with money, but most of our lives we're told we're not. And that a woman who chases money, there must be something wrong with her. And those sorts of things start to come in. So at the crux of all this is that it's an incredible opportunity to heal and start to practice self-trust and start to look at anywhere there's a self-betrayal that we can heal together. So you can really start to regain that self-trust so that when you start making a boatload of money, you know you're going to be great with it. You know you're going to make sure kids have clean water. You know that you're going to make sure if you want to invest in politics, if you want to go to the environment, if you want to go and make sure all the animals are saved, like whatever the thing is for you, you'll go find it, right? And to trust yourself and lean into that, because money is the most powerful tool we have access to right now. And we may not like that. We may not like that fact. People are like, no, it's love. I'm like, money's love though. So it's like this thing of like right now in the world, we have decided collectively as humanity that money is the most powerful tool we have access to. And I want more women to have access to the most powerful tool we have. That should absolutely go into the hands of women because we're so good with it. We tend to be more empathetic. We tend to understand the trickle-down effect. We tend to understand where it's going to be impacted. And when we can trust ourselves to do that and be honest with ourselves about how great we are, it actually gets really easy to make money. Yeah. Because you love having it, because you love what you can do with it.
That's right. It's a tool.
Yeah. It's a resource, right? Like you were saying about soccer, that resource wasn't there at that moment, right? And so understanding that if you want shoes and bags, awesome, go get shoes and bags. And if you want to go save all the animals, go save all the animals. But don't you want the opportunity to choose that? Don't you want the opportunity to say where that's going to go? And I think when people start to get that, it's like, yes, I do. Yeah. Oh my God, I want to do all the things, right? And that's where the real relationship, the healthy relationship to money can start to come in.
Yeah. When my husband and I have conversations around like, what does money mean, right? To us or and for us, we've always landed on it, the freedom of choice. Yes. The freedom of, I don't have to work. I want to work. I get to do the work that lights me up. The freedom of, I have money and I want to help X, Y, and Z. I want to do this. I want to involve, like whatever that is. It's just really, a resource for freedom of choice of whatever you want to do or matters to you. That's incredible. So you're a coach. And so where does that land in doing the actual work? So we always hear that, I'm doing the work. You got to do the work. And you're like, what the heck is the work? Right? It's
like, so funny.
Wave a magic wand, take the secret pill. But what does it actually look to be in the trenches of doing the work?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great question. I mean, my real philosophy about business success is that it's 20% strategy and 80% mindset. And anybody in business has experienced that, right? Like the Joe Schmo, whatever marketing system that you buy, right? Oh, it's so proven, blah, blah, blah. And if you go use that strategy with like, oh God, this is never going to work. It's probably not going to work. Right. And we've all had that experience of like, well, it worked for them. I must be stupid. It's like, no, your head probably wasn't in the right place. You can use any strategy you want when your head's in the right place is going to work. Because what you're saying to yourself and how you're responding to what's happening at work is everything. Yeah. Everything. And we've all had that experience too, right? When you're having the best day and you see someone who's upset, you actually have the capacity to offer help or to be funny or to be kind. Whereas when you're down and out and someone needs help, you're like, F all the way off, dude. Like, I don't have time. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it really changes how we show up on the planet. So to actually do this, for me, like when I really work with clients, we sit down, there is the strategy piece because you have to know where you're going or your brain doesn't work. Yeah. Right. I'm like very woo-woo. And then I'm like, tell me the numbers. Give me the numbers. What is the data? What's the data? And people are like, whoa, you're really the combo. I'm like, I am, because we don't know where we're going. Like it's all well and good to be like, I want $1 million. I'm going to meditate. That's great.
Not gonna wish your way there.
It's not going to come through your ceiling, people. That's not how that works. Right. So it's like having that attitude of I want $1 million or whatever it is, right? Like I really want to be successful. I want to help transform 30 lives this year. And understanding what you need to do that, the second you step into that, something's going to happen. You're going to hear, I'm an idiot. I don't know what the frick I think. You're going to see somebody else's post, somebody else's website, and you'll be like, I'm an idiot. I'm a fraud. This is never going to work. I don't know why I thought I could do. All of those things are going to come up. And to go through that without a coach, obviously it's very self-serving for me to say that. I'm completely aware. I think it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
you're not.
so hard.
I agree with you. You're not off. I think like the layover of, you're in the arena of like the relationship with money and the mindset, and I'm in the arena of time. And what is always connected? Time and money, time and money. And it is strategy. And I would say, I agree with you. There's always an intersection. I don't know for me that I agree with like 80-20, but what I always say is it's an intersection and it fluctuates. Sometimes and on some topics, you need 80% mindset. And sometimes it's more strategy. And so for me, I think it's a little fluid, but I see your point here. And I think our areas of expertise literally lay over each other. So let's just play this out. You have an abundance issue or a mindset issue around money. Well, how do you make money? By how you invest your time. And so where's the first place you're going to sabotage yourself if there's success challenges or money challenges is it shows up in I'm not doing what I said I'm going to do. I'm blowing off the calendar. I'm messing up my schedule. That's what it actually looks like, but deeper. And the work that I really do as a coach is like, well, why are you blowing off the schedule? Why are you, not choosing to do the thing that is most valuable and is high value? And so lots of overlap here. I just love this conversation.
Yeah,
all right,
no, me
so
too.
the work in coaching is that deep, those conversations, that uncovering what is actually blocking them and being their partner to walk through it together.
Yes.
That's how I see my clients. So partnering with them, walking through that journey of working through it.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's absolutely it. And, a lot of times people will be like, well, you're this business coach. So like, don't you have a program you just shove me through? And I'm like, no, I do you.
Yeah.
I do you so you can go do your business. And I think that's really important. And it's so funny about time and money between the two of us. I think you and I are up against something. Both of us are up against something, right? So your time, I'm money. And I think people have them confused. I think people think they have all the time in the world and money's scarce. And my view is money's infinite and time is the only resource you can't get back. And so I'm like, you guys all have this crossed. You can
and
make
that's
as much
the
money.
quote of the episode, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna be playing that all over social media. That was a good one. Okay.
But it's so you can make more money. Solve a problem, go make money. End of list. Like that's all you have to do is solve a problem. If you help someone get through something faster and with less pain, you make money.
Isn't that crazy that people literally waste their time away? My favorite quote is from Jim Rohn. So time is your most valuable asset. Don't spend it, kill it, or waste it, but invest it. And the first premise of that quote is like, you don't actually see it as an asset or that it's very limited. Scarce. And so you're not even thinking about it as I think about it like, a checking account. Like we actually don't even know how much is in the checking account, but we know it's a very finite amount and we're just blowing right through it.
Yes.
Then we go into your arena and we're like, hold on for dear life and don't spend it or don't earn it or don't whatever. It's almost one end or the other on the spectrum of like what we do with money. So I can't even say that better. So I'm just going to leave it with what you said. Beautiful.
Love it.
Beautiful. But I did cut you off. So we were talking about the work. And so the work is with coaching and navigating through that. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about abundance. So we understand that mindset is the work that needs to be done. And is the goal always to go to this place of abundance? Like, is that the work with the relationship of money?
It's a relationship to anything. I mean, we also touch on time in the Abundance Academy a lot. We touch on overwhelm, right? We touch on the feeling of love. We touch on obviously money. And there's a lot. I mean, everybody in the Abundance Academy runs a business, right? So there's not enough clients. There's not enough time in a day to put up a website. And then when you put up a website, it doesn't matter because there's not enough room on the internet anymore. Like there's like you pick a thing, right? So I really consider it my job to actually have people become aware of the abundance that already exists. It's already here all the time, every day. And there are exercises. People are like, okay, Sarah, I'll do any of your stupid exercises, but my electric bill just came and I'm freaking the frick out, right? Or whatever. And I'm like, great, look at the bill. Okay, put it down and now look up. Wiggle your toes in your shoes and ask yourself right now, who needs you today? And that is one of my favorite exercises. And I mean, gosh, I think so what I tell people is who needs me today? And then text them, call them, email, whatever, just who needs me today? And you're not doing it in order to make money, right? But you usually will. And you do it by leading with service and leading with that idea of abundance. If you have these gifts for a reason, you have this business for a reason, so go give it to somebody.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest, I want to say financial response I've had to one of those was $48,000. I was like, that was the best text message I ever said and totally changed her life. She's in a completely different space, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, right. Like when I pull myself out, like you can go help somebody or you can freak out about the bill. And I'm not saying don't pay the bill. Of course you pay the bill. You generated that bill. You created that bill with your own activity, right? Like you generated that in the world.
Right.
That's actually kind of cool, right? So think about that. This is how you're participating in the world. And now you go out and say, all right, how can I be of service so that I can then repay that? And then moving forward from there, it's like, okay, so now I can repay all my bills, all the things I've generated, because you generate all of them, right?
Yeah.
So I'm generating these. Now, how can I build on top of that? I have to be of more service. I have to solve bigger problems. I have to start to figure out how else these talents can be used and who needs me today. And living inside of just that conversation alone can completely transform the revenue in your business. It sounds crazy. It takes 3 seconds. People are like, you can't solve all my business problems in 3 seconds. I'm like, you want to bet? Like, that's a bet I'll take, right? And people just laugh and then it lightens it. And all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, Joe from accounting for my last job. And they go email Joe and he's like, oh my God, I was just thinking about. And that's how it works. And I mean, it sounds woo-woo. It's not. It's very practical. You have to act. You have to take the action. You have to be responsible for what you're putting into the world. But most people don't see it that way.
Yeah.
And then I find if they're like, no, I'm still not connected to the fact that I live in this incredibly abundant world. I'm like, great. Your next job is to go to the grocery store. What? Go to the grocery store and I want you to go to the produce section. I don't want you to look at how many different kinds of apples are available to sale for you right now. Because you just felt like going into the store. Just go look. You don't have to buy any. Just look. And know for each one of those apples, oh, they don't have Fuji today. Oh my God, my pink lady's not here. Right? Like all the things we think when we go in there is every single one of those apples was planted. The tree was planted. Somebody was responsible for watering it, growing it, making sure the sun was right, making sure it was protected. Somebody had to like pluck it. Somebody had to package it. Somebody had to drive a truck to get it to you so you could sit there and be mad that the pink lady's out. Like that's the world of abundance that we are all a part of all the time.
Yeah.
And you just have to plug into it. And then if that doesn't work, I got one more.
Okay.
You have to go to a Starbucks or a coffee shop or wherever. And I want you to think about, just watch the amount of money that's flying. Right there, just in the Starbucks. Look at how much money is flying around the planet right there. And then I want you to think of every other Starbucks on the planet. Then I want you to think globally. There is so much money circulating all the time. While you and I've been talking, how many billions of dollars have switched hands on this planet? It's nonstop, 24/7. Money is flying. And there is a massive flow. Are you ready to jump into it?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Like, oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Go help people.
I mean, and this is where the work, right? We're saying like, what's that magical work? There is work, but then there's also this opportunity where somebody says something as powerful as that. And can you just accept it and choose to change the way you're thinking about it? I mean, that is sometimes as easy as the work can be. I know other times it's not. You know, my own journey is like, I've been with my husband since we were 15. Like we know what it was like, you know, cool. Yeah, like we've been together forever. Wow. And, you know, so I know how he was raised. I know how I was raised. We were together as children, essentially. That's weird to say. And then through adulthood and starting our careers and me launching my business and all these things. And his mindset about money is abundance and just it's been amazing. And I thought we lived so similar, right? We lived in the same neighborhood. So we were, you know, our parents were making about the same amount of money. Like we had a similar lifestyle. So like when I see him have all this abundance and I would ask him like, where did this come from? What is this belief? Like, how did you do this? And why do I think this way? He wasn't able to answer him because that is natural. This fast forward. I'm 43 now. So fast forward, like this is his natural state, I believe is a natural state of abundance. So for him to explain how he got there, he's like, I don't know what you mean. It just is. So all through the decades and the years, I was like, wow, that man is at peace. Man, he thinks about different things than I do because I'm coming from scarcity. And while I didn't have scarcity around was my business going to be successful or could I cut it or anything like that, it was around specifically about money because I saw how hard it was to make money. I saw how hard it was to get food on the table, like just my own childhood. But it was the lens that I put on and the story that I put on over it. And then that was the helpful pivot of like, okay, so if we've lived so many decades already together and he has this abundance lifestyle, this truly is like, not that he had major life experiences different. It was I processed something differently along the way.
Yes.
I am thinking about something differently. And that was a great challenge for me to be like, okay, so like I see his joy or his, peace. And I'm like, I want that. That will serve me well in my business.
Yes.
How do I get that? And that is, and again, we talk about the work, but that's the work. And it's not just, I saw my husband peacefully abundantly think about money one day. And I'm like, yes, that's it. It's a process. And you get stumble and you think you got it figured out. And then the bank account goes to a certain number. You're like, well, I was abundant, but now I'm not because it's that number. And you're like, oh, so it was a conditional abundance. That's funny. Keep doing the work.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yes. So good. So good. And that is the work. I mean, and I love what you keep saying about lenses and how we view things and our thinking, because, sometimes people, I think with coaches, they're like, oh, I know, limiting beliefs, wah, wah, or whatever, right? But it's like, you have to really understand the trail of human behavior.
Yep.
And that we believe something and that creates a thought and the thought creates a feeling. Right. And all that is invisible, right? Like we can't see it really, right? It's like, oh, I call that the inside world. And then there's the results that those beliefs and emotions and thoughts create. But there's a bridge between those two.
Mm-hmm.
And that's action. And that's the human process. We believe something, then we think something, we have an emotion, that emotion causes us to act, and the actions create result. It's always that process, right? So what's your current weight? That's a result. How's your health? That's a result. Where's your relationship? That's a result, right? All those things. It's like, oh, but it's a result of what? It's a result of what you believe.
Absolutely. I actually have that right here on my wall.
Do you really?
Right? Yes. It's right here.
Oh my gosh, I love us.
As a reminder. So I have sayings and quotes from me, but other things that motivate me. And that is one of them. And so I just want to add to that. You're 100% right. And I want to add to that because this was a little tweak that changed how I saw that.
Ooh, tell me.
So, your beliefs create your thoughts, create your feelings, create your action or inaction.
Correct.
Right? So we're hiding, we're avoiding, we're not making a decision. And that's the work I do with my clients so much is like, there's still a cost. That's still a result of whether you took action or you didn't take action. And I think that that's as equally powerful to be like, oh, so doing nothing or avoiding or, is because of a belief? That's interesting.
Yes, so good. Oh my God, Amber, that's so important and absolutely true. Absolutely true. And choosing not to act is also an action.
Right.
You're acting by sitting on the couch watching Netflix, right? Or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so great. It's a really important distinction. Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about relationships and abundance. And so let's just bring this full circle on this conversation about like, you're a sales coach. You're teaching business owners how to sell the thing that they're specially skilled and talented at to serve the world with, right? That's what I believe us as business owners. We have a gift to share with the world. And this, we've talked about money and bank accounts and all these different things. But really, when we talk about action or inaction, like the top of the funnel in a business is sales, right? Like you're either showing up for it or you're not. You're either asking for your worth or you're not. So talk to us a little bit about that intersection between our relationship with money, abundance, and then the sales.
Yeah. I mean, for most business owners, right? Okay. So we have the intersection of women we've already talked about, right? Like, don't trust yourself. You're probably not that great with money, whatever, right? So that's usually in the background. Not all the time, but most of the time, that's where that is. Then there's this other thing that has happened to all of us. Is somebody sold us something that sucked. It doesn't matter. Like a cheesy Instagram video, and you're like, oh my God, I bought these sweatpants and they came and they're like barely paper, right? Or whatever, right? Or you bought a really expensive coach from one of their courses, right? And you're like, this is garbage. But they pressured you so much on the phone. You're like, oh my God, I gotta buy it. Right. Okay. We've all had that experience and it sucks. It is awful. And I find for most business owners, especially when the business is built on your experience, your expertise, your talents, your gifts, is this fear that you will somehow taint those gifts or ruin them by being salesy. And we can get how that happens, right? Because we've somehow collapsed sales with sleaze, or it's slimy. And where I really help people sort of pull that apart, again, talking about beliefs, is sales is actually a form of service. It's like if you saw someone bleeding out on the sidewalk and a doctor walks by and goes, well, I don't want to be salesy. And the person dies. It's like, no, that's not what we do. No, people, no, right? Like, we have to remember that our offers are highly of service. And so I know if somebody doesn't feel that way, if they're a little bit unsure, like, I don't know if it's going to work. That's a big one. They might buy, I don't know if it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that usually tends to be more on the service end, but it can happen with products too. Somebody makes a product, they're like, yeah, but what if it sucks by the time it gets there? Or what, there's usually that insecurity. So it's really understanding, and this is actually marketing and sales work, but is understanding the moment of success for the buyer, not you, but for the buyer. What is their moment of success? And can you put yourself there for them? And if we can do that with such compassion and heart and empathy, one, you will never sell to somebody who can't afford it or shouldn't be participating or won't do the work. That's a lot of what my discovery calls are.
That's what my discovery calls are too, right?
I'm like, I love you to pieces. Not yet. Come back when you're ready. Yeah.
I mean, because obviously there's money, but there's this joyfulness. Like, we are invested. We want our clients to get the results they're paying for.
100%.
But it's a partnership. I referred to that earlier. So we have to know, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to, explore questioning beliefs and going down these, different pathways, like just to be, I call it coachable, right? I'm sure that's a term you might use, but being open, doing the work, showing up, moving through when it's hard, showing back up again.
Not running away, right? Not being inactive, all those things. But I think, if we can really look at sales as a form of service, like the doctor walking by someone, of course they're going to stop and help, and they're probably not going to send that person a bill, right? Because it's like, I'm going to help you with this, or they might, who knows, right? If they have to end up at a certain hospital or something happens. But the other analogy I use a lot, and does tend to be, humans who are female, this tends to be, a really specific issue, is that fear of deserving. And I always love to use this example. I was working with a psychotherapist. She was amazing, by the way. She works really on the power of positive thinking, but not toxic positivity. She's very clear about that, and the power of gratitude. And she has scientifically studied it the way Brene Brown has scientifically studied shame. Like, it is amazing, her work. And we were actually at a conference, and she stood up and was like, oh, but I can't. I go, how many of your male colleagues have this question about how much they charge? And she said 0. I said, yeah, because you were trained to do invisible, unpaid work as a woman. And she was like, and I go, yeah. I go, does your work help people? And she said, immensely. I said, yeah. So kind of like a brain surgeon helps people. She goes, I go, yeah. Could you imagine if a brain surgeon's like, well, I can't save their lives because, they might not be able to afford it. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
They save people's lives, and they get paid very well to do so, and they don't have a problem with it. And the person who gets the help doesn't have a problem with it. What we're working on is unwiring, detangling this idea that, I don't even like the phrase charging what you're worth. And it's in some of my earlier work. I always want to go back and be like, no, but it's like, actually charge what the work is worth, and what the result is worth for that person. And I think it's important for us to remember that. But as soon
That's
as
a
you
huge shift, by the way. And I do still say charge your worth, but what I really mean is what you just said, which is just huge, of what is the value of the work? Because then your job is, you want to raise, come to the table and provide more value.
That's exactly right. Solve a bigger problem. Solve a bigger problem. And that's exactly right. And that's why I say money's infinite.
Yes.
Because people will always need support, and we will always need each other. And if you have this vein of expertise that you can get there to help somebody get through something faster and with less pain, they will pay money for that. Think of your own spending habits. Like, we all do that. I'll pay money to get through something faster. Absolutely. And so I think it's this detangling of a lot of our female training. Honestly, if you were born into a female body and raised as a female, like, that's what you're going to hear and get is like, where's my pretty smile? Oh, please don't have feelings. So you're not worth anything, right? You're worth what you can perform. You're worth how you can make other people happy, but you yourself feel like you don't have value. That's very, very important. And then also to look at, I have people do this a lot, is to look at male colleagues and just watch. They don't have that issue, right? And it's not your fault. That's another thing. I hated that book, Lean In, because she's like, it's your fault. I'm like, it's not our fault. We were trained to lean back. Hold on, right? Like, no more blaming women for everything. No. We were taught to do that.
Yeah.
Let's unlearn it. Yes, very valuable, but let's not get mad that we were taught, like, whoa, and this idea that we can heal anything. And I really believe that. And I think the more we talk about this, the better. Because we need to understand that sales is such a form of service. I mean, just think about that. Like, pick a thing that you really wanted. You wanted a special ring. You wanted the perfect present for your boyfriend at the time, or you've been looking for a book to just answer this one question. It's driving you nuts. And you find it. Like, how freaking excited are you?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, thank God I found, oh my God. Right? That's how your customers feel when you show up. Thank God I found you. There's nothing better than after a sales conversation with someone and I get a thank you note. It's like the best, because it's like they got it. They were looking for someone who's like, I'm going to help you solve this specific problem. And they're so glad because they were looking. And we have to remember that's who's coming to the door. They want it to be the answer. It's like when you pick up a book in the bookstore and you're like, oh, please be the one I want. That's how they feel when they get on the phone with you, or they see your sales page. You're like, please be the thing I need. And for you to act like you're above selling that is actually to cut them off. And that's actually such a disservice. And I know when the really heart-centered business owners get that, sales start flying, because they get that they were actually being a little bit selfish. They were putting their ego above the service. And as soon as that stops and you just get humble and you're like, I can help you with that, you do whatever you need to do. And that's what I teach about in sales calls, is I never say, what do you want? What do you do right now? Ever.
Yeah.
People know they're brilliant. Let them figure it out. And you give people space and they'll choose what's right for them. And then you trust that. And if there's something you learned from that, it didn't go well, it went really well. What did you learn? How did they need to hear about how you helped them? What changed that time? Can you help more people with that? And then it's fun, because then you're doing what you're on the planet to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. When I think also about sales, when I first started my business, I was like, same thing. I'm like, ugh, because, right? Like it's pressured. You're being pressured into buying something you don't want or you don't need. And I don't view what I do as sales, because I still have that belief, right? Like sales is salesy. I believe I'm making an offer. And again, it is sales, of course, but the difference is everything you just explained of, you're just showing up to make the offer of your services that could change their life or help them. And how many times have I been in a sales situation, but I didn't label it as sales because I was looking for the ring, the thing, the whatever. Like I was the pursuer. And so then somebody was on the other end saying, well, let me teach you about all of the different rings there are. Let me talk to you about what your options are. That technically was a sales, but I didn't feel like I was in a sales conversation. And so that's the side that obviously is in my business of like, I'm not trying to pressure anybody into anything. You're making an offer and everybody has free choice.
That's right. That's right. It's so different, isn't it? And isn't it amazing when you're the buyer, you never feel like you're in a sales conversation, right?
Right. If it's what you're looking for, you need, you're like, oh, wow, this person's so knowledgeable. I can't even tell you how many times we've gone somewhere and done something and my husband and I will leave. I'm like, wow, that was so helpful. They were so knowledgeable. Okay, let's go think what they said and we'll be back. Like just because they came from a place of service and like listening to whatever I'm thinking like trips to Best Buy. We go in, we don't know anything about the internet routers. And we have this kid talking circles. And I remember leaving like, oh my gosh, like he was so helpful. Like, how did he know all that? And he just shared it. And now it's so clear which one we need. Oh, thanks for making it easier.
Yeah. And you didn't go, God, that guy was so salesy.
No, not at all.
Yes, that's exactly right. And when we're in our zone of sharing brilliance, it doesn't ever feel like sales, ever.
Right.
Ever. Never. I had that exact same experience. It's just like, oh, that was such a fun conversation. And I'll see you on Monday when we start. Like that's how it feels, because they're ready. They don't come unless they're ready. They were looking, they found, and then you just show up and talk about it. And then they get to choose. Yeah. Right. So much easier. No pressure, right? So much easier. Yeah.
So here on the podcast, we're very actionable. And so as we close up, I just wanted to know, is there something that a business owner can take action on like immediately from this conversation? I actually think you have a freebie, but if there's another actionable you're thinking about too, is like Okay, man, this conversation was so inspiring to like change and think about the way my relationship with money and sales. What's a great place to start?
I love so I do something during the sales mastermind. We have a retreat and we have a 5-minute break and I call it a sales challenge. I'm like, go sell something in the 5-minute break. And they go, what? Oh my God. And they freak out, right? And then they come back and they're like, oh my God, I totally just sold something. I'm like, isn't that great? And it's so fun. So I would give everybody listening that challenge. Go sell something today and do that by sharing the result. Just go share the results. Like, oh my God, you guys, you can do an email. You can do a quick face to camera story on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, whatever your jam is. And just be like, do you guys know I help people do XYZ? If that's what you've been looking for, would you call me? Because I'd love to chat with you about it. And that's it. Just go do something like that. Go push yourself beyond where you think you can go and just be a person. Just be a person. Go check out my Instagram. I do that probably daily. You'll see something. I'm like, you guys, you're not gonna believe what just happened today. And sometimes I'm just telling a story, but other times I'm like, I'm doing like a workshop in 3 weeks. You better get over here, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, it's always inside of a conversation and I'll always tell them what they're gonna get. Go do that. Go sell something today. Right now, just go sell something. You can do it. So I think that would be my challenge.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And then you do have something free for our listeners. And so if you can share a little bit about that, how they can get it, and then also how they can connect with you and your work.
Yeah. So I have found one of the biggest problems to sales, or these hurdles we've been talking about this whole entire time, is knowing the goal. Like our minds need like an end game. They need to see where you're going. And so I realized to really help people with this, you need to know how much you need to make in a month in order to feel free. And so I created a calculator. It's called the Freedom Calculator and it's free. Just go grab it. And what you do is you're going to actually put in your numbers. You're going to put in your rent, your numbers, your staff, anything that you've got that you have to take care of every month. And then look at what is your number? What do you need to make every single month to feel free? You got to know what that is. And then your brain will start working on it. It's so cool. So you get the calculator and then there's like 10 pages of marketing training after that. And it's all free. I just want to you guys just know your number and then go get it. And that to me is what the Freedom Calculator is for. And it's super easy. It's sarahwalton.com/freedom. I try to make things nice for people. But yeah.
And we'll be sure to put those links in the show notes too, or go grab it right now. Hit pause and go grab it.
Best.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so fun. And I will anyway. So you can come hang out with me, sarahwalton.com. I also have a podcast that Amber's on. Hooray, hooray. It's called the Game On Girlfriend Podcast because the game is on. This is not your practice life. And I also have a YouTube channel. So you can come hang out with me on YouTube and Instagram as well.
Incredible. We'll be sure to link out to everything. Sarah, thank you so much for, all your strategy, mindset, stories. It was a well-rounded interview. Thank you so much for showing up the way you did today for our listeners.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a joy. Absolutely loved it.
Oh my gosh, you got to meet Sarah, and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast today. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So based on this conversation with Sarah around abundance, money mindset, what will you take action on? How will you pivot and transform your beliefs and your thought patterns to get different results in your business? That's my question for you today. How were you inspired to take action from this conversation? Before we close out, I want to see if you have thought about working with me. If you are looking for a business coach that can help you manage your time so that you can enjoy being a business owner. You can have time for what matters most to you and your personal life, your relationships, your hobbies. That you're not squeezing out the joy of life because you're a business owner. If you're looking to increase your productivity and that of your team so that you can increase profits, provide a better service to your clientele. If you're looking for someone to partner with you on strategic decision making, then we should talk. I invite you to schedule a discovery call. To learn more about my coaching offering and to schedule a discovery call, head on over to amberdelagarza.com. Again, that's amberdelagarza.com. I look forward to speaking with you and having the opportunity to partner with you in your business. If you are new here, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And for those of you that are longtime return listeners, I thank you so much for tuning in each week. Please share this episode and any of your favorite episodes of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast with a fellow business owner whom you will think will find it valuable. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.